Hey everyone, welcome to CIS 234. This is week 1, fall 2018. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do today. So my name is Dan Rusk, if you haven't met me. Here's a picture of me right there. I'm an adjunct professor here at Carroll Community College, but I also have a day job as the VP of Software Development at Thorn Technologies. It's in Columbia. And that's enough about me. So today we're going to, I'm going to give you an intro to the course. I'm going to tell you how to set up your computer with the software requirements. And we're going to start reviewing HTML and CSS. And within there, we'll be talking about Lab 1, which we do next week. So take a moment to go online and review the syllabus. And after you do that, note these 2 points from the syllabus I wanted to cover. So first of all, there are no late assignments accepted. And there are a few reasons for that. One being that there could be labs that build off previous labs you've done. And second, there'll be live code reviews that will go over the previous week's assignment in a one-on-one fashion with me. Now these will be scheduled in advance, so we can work out a time that works for both of us, but generally at night would be better. And what we'll do is we'll do a screen share between me and whoever the lucky students are that week to answer questions about the code, and then you'll have to fix or suggest fixes for the code. And these sessions will be recorded and shown to the other students later in an edited fashion. So that'll be part of everyone else's viewing. So each week you'll get to see these code reviews, and you'll get these lectures as well. And if you're a lucky student, you'll get to do the live code review. So we'll get to that when we get there. This week we can relax. No code reviews this week. It's the first week. But we'll start doing them next week. And I'll let you know who's going to be on that schedule. Alright, stay tuned for the next section. For this course, there are a couple of software requirements. The 2 software requirements from the beginning will be Chrome, which if you don't have, you can download from google.com/Chrome. It's a free browser, works on Windows, Mac, has good developer tools. We're using that, and we'll be using Webstorm. Webstorm is an IDE that we'll be using to develop our JavaScript and our HTML. You can download a free 30-day trial. Go ahead and download it. It works on Windows and Mac. And then you can actually get a free license since you're a student. So if you go to Buy and then Discounted and Complimentary Licenses, then you can go to this For Students and Teachers link and then verify your identity. So you'll need your official email address, which you have, so it'll work out great. So with this free license, you get every single tool that JetBrains offers, which are all great tools. So check them out. Webstorm is the one you want. Download that one. Try to make a project with it. You're going to be using it in Lab 1. Get to that soon. So we're just going to dive right into starting a Webstorm project. So we're just going to use Webstorm for a pretty simple project. Usually Webstorm's used for when you have lots of JavaScript, a lot of libraries and dependencies, which we'll talk about later and we'll definitely be using later. But for the beginning of the class, we're going to be using HTML and CSS. So we're going to create some simple projects in Webstorm just to get familiar with Webstorm and how it works. So first thing we're going to do is create an empty project. You'll see there's an HTML5 boilerplate, but we're not going to use that right at this moment. You also see there's a Vue.js one there, which is actually what we're going to be using later in this course. For now, let's start with an empty project. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into a folder. Calling it Lab 1. You can put it wherever you want. You can use this and search for your destination. So I created a project, and this is the empty project. You'll see there's nothing in here. Everything's grayed out. I can't do anything really. I can add configurations. But what you want to do is right-click on your folder and go to New, and then HTML file. And generally, HTML files, the home page is called index, so we're going to call it index. We don't need to put a .html at the end, and we'll go ahead and press OK. And now we have our index.html. Now that we have an index.html page, we can see the contents that Webstorm provides for us automatically. Now at the top we'll see a doc type tag, which is set to HTML, which stands for HTML5. There are some other doc type tags, but we're not going to use them. The only ones we're going to use in this class is doc type HTML. Now HTML page starts with the HTML tag, an opening tag, and you'll see how Webstorm highlights this closing tag down here. So HTML is closed at the bottom and starts at the top. This is the root element that contains all the other HTML elements inside of it. Inside the head we'll find metadata. So we see the char set set to UTF-8, and the title is set to title. This is the title that will show up on the top of the browser window. And we'll also do other stuff in here, like set links to Stylesheets and load web fonts up inside the head. So anything that doesn't display on the page will generally be inside the head. We'll go ahead and set the title to Lab 1. Now inside the body is where we'll put the content that is actually shown to the user. Now let's add a simple red square to our page. So we're going to create this red square using a div tag. And we're going to use an inline style to style this square. So we're going to set the background color to red, and then we're going to set the height and the width. So I'm just using 50 pixels, so we'll see something on the screen. Now when I close a tag, Webstorm automatically adds our closing tag here, and then we can preview our page using the Chrome button here. Just do it. Now we see our red square on the page. Now wouldn't it be cool if it was in the center of the page? Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to center this element using the flex box. So Flex is a newer CSS style that lets you really easily manage the layout of your page. And one of the particular things I like using it for is centering elements. So we're going to go ahead and create a main tag that will wrap our div. So we're going to go ahead and wrap our div with a main, with a new HTML5 semantic elements, and we're going to add a style to this to make it a flex container. Now when we make something a flex container, every one of its children automatically become flex items. If we want to center the items in the middle of the page, we'll just use the justify content and the align items properties. Now let's see what that did. I'm going to go back to our page and refresh it. And make sure we save it. So you notice our square is centered in the browser window horizontally, but it's not centered vertically. Now why is that? Well, let's inspect. With Chrome we have developer tools, and we can reach these developer tools in several ways. One way is we can right click on the HTML and we can use inspect. Now when we inspect, we can see the sizes of the elements, their padding, and we can use their style properties over here. So we want to look at our main Flex container we have up here, and we see that the blue outline, the blue background on our HTML up here is only as tall as the red square. And that's what divs do by default, or tags do by default, where they will fit the size of their content. So we need to actually make this main tag fit the entire page. Now if we do 100%, we see the body is actually only fitting the content as well. So we need this main tag to do 100% of the browser window. And we can do that with by setting the height to 100 VH, which is the viewport height. Now we see our main tag spans the entire browser height. And our box is now centered. So now let's say we want to have a second or third square on our page. Let's try to create 3 squares here. Now we have 3 squares all in the center, but there's no space between them, so now they look like a long rectangle. So we could add some padding to these squares or even a margin to make them separated. So I'm going to go ahead and set a margin on this first one. Set a margin right of 1 rem. And rem is a relative unit relative to the font height of the root element. So you can look that up. And I'll set a margin right on the second element as well. Now we don't need to set a margin right on the third element because there's nothing to the right of it, but we might as well, just in case we want to add one later. If we go back to our page, we see now they are separated. We can see 3 distinct rectangles. But look at all this repeated code. So when we have repeated code like this, it's generally bad practice, because if we want to make a change, so let's say we want to change the height of these rectangles to 60 and the width to 60, we have to make this change in 6 places. It's not very easy, and it is definitely error prone. Our rectangles are slightly bigger. So let's move these style tags into an embedded CSS style sheet. So to do that, we're going to create a style tag inside of our head. And then we're going to create a class called red dot. So we do that with a dot, red dot, and put our style inside of there. So we can copy and paste or cut and paste from here to up here, and then we can just add some new lines to fix our styling. Now instead of using the style down here, we can use the class. Now there are other ways to select this with CSS selectors, which we'll do later. So now instead of having the style duplicated each time, we just have this class we refer to, and any changes we make will apply to every element that has this class. Back to normal. Let's go ahead and do that with the main tag as well. Now the main will use the tag selector instead of the class selector. So instead of using the dot in front of it, we're just going to use the tag name. So we don't need the dot. We'll go ahead and copy and paste the main style up into this style tag. And notice we won't even need a class on this main tag now. Let's see how that looks. It looks exactly the same because we didn't change any of the style. It's good. Now let's add a little bit more to our page. So let's add a background color to our main element. Go ahead and make it blue-violet. Now if we go preview our work, we'll see we have our blue-violet background. Now you'll notice that there's a little border where it's not quite hugging the page. And if we check out the inspector, we'll check out why. So the main element itself, has no padding on it. We can see it in this bottom right here. No padding, no border. But if we go to the body element, we see this margin of 8 pixels. Now, this is the default browser style that the user agent style sheet that displays this body element with a margin of 8 pixels, giving us this white border. Now we could set this body style to a margin of 0 pixels, but then it would only work on this page. We want to have something that we can use on every page that we create. So we're going to create a reset style sheet, and we're going to build onto that as we go. So we're going to do that by right-clicking on our project folder, going to New, and then Style Sheet, and call it Reset. Now inside here, we're just going to set the body to a margin of 0. Now that we have that style sheet, that external style sheet in our folder, we need to link it to our HTML page. And we should link it before any other styles to make sure that our styles will override the reset style sheets when we need it to. So we're going to do link href equals reset.css, and then we're going to set the rel to style sheet. Now we press refresh on our browser, and we see our main content goes all the way to the edge now. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's add some letters to our dots. So I'm going to do my full name to make it a little bit more characters. So Daniel. Let's check out what that looks like. See, my letters in my name are at the top left of the squares. Let's get them centered. So we're going to use the same technique that we used for centering the div elements inside the main. We're going to make these red dots flex containers. So we're going to make them display flex. And we're going to justify the contents and align the items center. There we go. Now the items are centered vertically and horizontally. So our letters look pretty plain. So let's change these to use a web font. So to use a web font, we can just go to Google Web Fonts. This is a collection of fonts provided by Google that will basically provide a large variety and styles of fonts we can use. Let's check out the featured ones and pull one from here. So these super families look pretty cool. 5 fresh headline ones. High impact vernacular display. Let's check that out. I particularly like this one, so we'll go ahead and use that one. Let's look for that one. Here it is. So to use this, we just need to hit this add button, and then we have our family selected down here. Click this up, and we can go ahead and use one of these ways to embed the font. So there are 2 ways. We can use the standard way or the import. If we were working inside of a style sheet, we could easily do it with this. Or if we wanted to keep it outside of our style sheet, we could use this link tag. We'll go ahead and use this import. The import will go inside of our embedded CSS, like so. Now to use that font, we can just specify it in the CSS like so. So the red dot will now have a font family of UART cursive. Yes, although now we can't really see it, so let's make it a little bit more contrasting with the background. So we'll make it white. There we go. Although you can't really read it now, we need to make it bigger. So we'll make the font size double the size it normally is. Looking pretty good. A little bit bigger. And that's pretty good. Instead of doing white, let's do gold. And let's adjust this height and width to be relative to the font size. So we'll set it to 5 rems. So now we know that the font will be half the size of the squares. Great. So now we have a web font in our project. Next, we'll learn about CSS Transitions. Now, CSS Transitions are really good for when you want to add interactivity to your web page. That's really easy to add. So for instance, when I hover over each of these elements, let's make them a little bit bigger and change their color. So if we go to our code, we can add a pseudo class to select the red dot when it's being hovered with the mouse. So the pseudo classes again use the single quote, the single colon. Pseudo elements would use double colons. We'll get to those later. So when the red dot is being hovered, we're going to change the height to 6 rem, and we're going to set the background color to coral. If we save that and we go to our page, refresh, we can see it is affecting the page, but it's not animated. So let's add animation to it by using transitions. So we're going to set the transition on the base class, not on the hover class, because then the transition would only apply while we were hovering the mouse. If we wanted to hover both ways, if we want the transition to apply both ways, we set it right inside of here. And we'll go ahead and transition everything. So we'll use the all, and we'll do it over 0.5 seconds. Now we see some animations. We could also make the letters bigger and the width. Let's try that out. Looks pretty good. One more thing, since we're here. Alright, this looks pretty fancy, right? And that was pretty easy to do with just one little transition here. We'll see more complicated animations in the next section. So now let's add some animations to our page. So one thing I want the letters to do, or the red dots to do, is dance on the screen. So we can do that by like rotating them back and forth. So to do animations, what we need to do is create the animation keyframes. So we're going to create an @keyframes and then name it dance. This could be named whatever you'd like. We're just choosing dance. Now we need to set the keyframes that the element can transition through. So the most basic ones are just to say from and then to. So now we can apply CSS in the beginning and CSS at the end, and then the browser will interpolate the rest of the frames between the from and to. So in this case, we're going to rotate the element. I'm going to say transform, rotate, and we're going to go ahead and rotate it 20 degrees. At the end, we're going to rotate it the other way. We're going to rotate to -20 degrees. Let's see what that would look like. Well, first we need to actually apply it to our element. So if we just, I got a typo here. If we just save it and go to our page, you'll notice it didn't affect anything at all. So to apply it to our element, we need to use the animation property, and we can then specify the name of the animation and then how long it'll run, how many times it'll run, and then how it will reverse. So by default, it'll just loop forward and then it'll go back to the beginning and loop again, but we want it to loop back and forth. So we're going to say alternate and go ahead and save it. Now we notice that our items are dancing on the page. They still react to the mouse hover, but they are dancing. That's animations. You can add more keyframes to the animation as well by using percentages. So we could say a 0% to 100% here, and we could add a 50%. Or maybe it's going to do a spin. So we could say it's going to rotate 360 degrees in the middle. Wow, this is pretty terrible. Let's turn that off. I hope now you feel warmed up with HTML and CSS and feel a little bit comfortable with the Webstorm IDE. In the coming classes, we'll be diving deeper into HTML, CSS, and we'll be going into grids and layouts and mobile responsive and input controls, and we'll get to JavaScript. After that, we'll be going into web frameworks and CSS frameworks. So I hope this is a productive semester, and if you have any questions or feedback, please let me know immediately. If you want to see a live version of the project online, go to c3cis.com and click through these links. And you'll see a version very similar to the one I created on this video. And for the final note, I just wanted to again bring up W3 Schools. This will be the primary resource we'll be using in the beginning of this course for learning HTML and CSS and starting with JavaScript. So go here, check it out. I'm going to post the links to the resources you should read, but there'll be the HTML and CSS tutorials to a certain point. All right, again, if you have any feedback, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And otherwise, I will see you next time.